What if one small discovery could change your whole life? It all started on a quiet Saturday morning when Mike found something unexpected in his wife's drawer. At first, it seemed like a mistake, maybe something he wasn't supposed to see. But the more he thought about it, the more questions filled his mind. Could his wife be hiding something? Was there more to her late nights and missing wedding ring than he realized? What Mike finds next pulls him deeper into a mystery he never expected, one that might tear his family apart. Sometimes, the people closest to us have the biggest secrets. It was a lazy Saturday morning, the kind where you linger a little longer in bed before the world calls you back to responsibility. Sarah had taken our youngest daughter, Emily, to her friend's house, leaving me home with our eldest, Sophie, who was still fast asleep. I figured I'd use the rare quiet time to catch up on some neglected cleaning. As I made my way through the bedroom, I noticed one of Sarah's dresser drawers slightly ajar. It wasn't unusual for things to be left out. Sarah's always been a little disorganized. But something shiny caught my eye, peeking out from beneath a folded sweater. Curious, I pulled the drawer open. There, nestled among socks and scarves, was a sleek black box. I froze for a second, debating whether to snoop. But my curiosity got the better of me. I lifted the lid and immediately felt my face flush. Inside were several adult toys, the kind we had never used together in our marriage. I stared at them, my mind racing with questions. Had Sarah bought these for herself? Or, my heart clenched, had she used them with someone else? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was exploring something on her own. But the items didn't look brand new. They had been used. My stomach churned. Memories of late nights when Sarah claimed to be working extra hours at the office surfaced in my mind. I sat down on the bed, staring at the drawer. Was my wife having an affair? Suddenly, I heard footsteps upstairs. I quickly shoved the box back into the drawer and closed it. Sophie's door creaked open, and she padded down the stairs in her pajamas. "Morning, Dad," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, sweetheart," I replied, trying to sound normal. She grabbed some cereal and flopped onto the couch to watch TV. I watched her for a moment, a pang of guilt hitting me. I had to know the truth about Sarah, but the thought of breaking apart our family was unbearable. Still, the box in the drawer gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was the beginning of something I wouldn't be able to stop once uncovered. The rest of that Saturday passed in a haze. I couldn't stop thinking about the box in Sarah's drawer. I tried to distract myself by tackling chores around the house, but every time I walked past our bedroom, my mind pulled me back to that unsettling discovery. When Sarah got home with Emily, she seemed completely normal. She kissed me on the cheek, asked how the morning had been, and went about her routine as if nothing was wrong. I watched her closely, searching for signs of guilt or unease. But there was nothing, just my wife, calm and cheerful. It made me feel crazy. Was I reading too much into this? I told myself I needed more proof before jumping to conclusions. But the thought that my wife might be hiding something haunted me. Later that evening, Sarah said she was heading out to meet some old friends for drinks. I didn't think much of it at first. She's done that plenty of times before. But this time, I couldn't ignore the twinge of suspicion in my gut. After she left, I decided to search the house more thoroughly. I needed to know if there were other clues I'd missed. I combed through our shared spaces first, starting with the bedroom closet. Nothing unusual. The bathroom cabinets? Just toiletries and makeup. But when I opened her nightstand, I found something strange. An unfamiliar phone charger tucked away in the back. I frowned. It wasn't the charger for her phone. I knew because I was the one who bought her latest phone, and this charger was for an older model. So whose phone did it belong to? The questions swirled in my mind, each more troubling than the last. Did she have a second phone I didn't know about? Was she using it to communicate with someone in secret? I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the charger in my hand. Everything felt off. The Sarah I knew wouldn't hide things from me. Or would she? As I sat there, lost in thought, Sophie came into the room. "Dad?" she asked, her voice hesitant. I quickly shoved the charger back into the drawer and closed it. "Yeah, sweetie?" She shifted uncomfortably. I need to talk to you about something." Her serious tone caught me off guard. Sophie wasn't usually the type to come to me with her problems. She was closer to her mom. What's on your mind? I asked, patting the bed beside me. She sat down but kept her gaze on the floor. It's kind of awkward. Hey, it's me, I said softly. You can tell me anything? Sophie fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. I need to ask you not to go through my stuff. I blinked, taken aback. What do you mean? You were in my room earlier, right? She asked, finally meeting my eyes. No, I said truthfully. Why? She sighed, clearly relieved. Okay, good. Never mind then. Before I could press her further, she got up and left the room, leaving me more confused than ever. But one thing was becoming clear. Something was definitely going on in this house, and I wasn't going to rest until I found out what. Sunday morning dawned with an uneasy quiet. Sarah was still asleep, and the house felt still, almost too still. I busied myself making breakfast for Emily and Sophie, but my mind was stuck on the conversation from the night before. Sophie's words lingered, "Don't go through my stuff." What had she been worried I'd find? After breakfast, Sarah emerged from the bedroom, hair tousled and yawning. She kissed me on the cheek like everything was fine, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was all an act. I watched her move around the kitchen, pouring coffee and chatting with the kids, but my mind was elsewhere. The unease from yesterday hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger. When Sarah stepped out to run errands, I decided it was time to confront the mystery head-on. Sophie's room had been nagging at me ever since our conversation. I stood outside her door, hesitating for a moment before knocking softly. No answer. She must have gone out with Emily. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Sophie's room was surprisingly tidy for a teenager, bed made, clothes folded neatly on a chair. Nothing seemed out of place at first glance. But then I spotted her nightstand. There was something odd about the way the drawer sat slightly ajar, almost as if it hadn't been fully closed in a rush. My pulse quickened as I approached it. Was this what she didn't want me to see? With a shaky hand, I pulled the drawer open. Inside, tucked beneath a notebook and some random trinkets, was the black box. The same box I'd found in Sarah's drawer. I froze, staring at it. My heart hammered in my chest. How had it ended up here? For a long moment, I just stood there, the weight of what I was seeing sinking in. Slowly, I lifted the lid. Inside were the same adult toys I'd seen before. And suddenly, it hit me. These weren't Sarah's. They were Sophie's. I stumbled backward, my mind spinning. How could I have been so wrong? I'd been so convinced that Sarah was hiding something, that she was having an affair. But all along, I'd misunderstood. The realization left me reeling. But just as I began to process what I'd discovered, another thought took hold. If the toys weren't Sarah's, why had I found that phone charger? And what about the missing wedding ring? The doubts that had plagued me didn't suddenly disappear. If anything, they intensified. Sophie's secret explained the box, but there was still something Sarah wasn't telling me. I had to figure out what, because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The rest of the day passed in an awkward haze. I couldn't bring myself to look at Sophie the same way after what I'd found. The realization that the black box belonged to her had thrown me completely off balance. Sarah returned home that evening, cheerful and chatty, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing inside me. As we sat down to dinner, I couldn't help but study her, searching for cracks in the facade, something to confirm that my suspicions weren't just paranoia. But she looked normal. The problem was, normal wasn't enough anymore. After dinner, I decided I needed to clear the air with Sophie. I couldn't pretend I hadn't found her secret. Maybe she'd be embarrassed, maybe she'd be angry, but I couldn't let it fester. I knocked on her bedroom door. "Come in," she called, her voice muffled. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Sophie was sitting on her bed, scrolling through her phone. When she saw the serious look on my face, she put it down. "What's up, Dad?" I took a deep breath. "We need to talk." Her expression shifted. "Is this about my drawer?" So, she did know. "Yes," I admitted. "I wasn't snooping, but I found something, and I think we need to have a conversation about it." Sophie's cheeks turned pink, and she looked away. "It's not what you think." "I'm not judging you," I said gently, "but I need to understand why you've been so secretive." and why you were worried I'd find it. She sighed heavily, pulling her knees up to her chest. I wasn't worried you'd find the box. I mean, yeah, it's embarrassing, but that's not what I was hiding. I frowned. Then what were you hiding? There was a long silence before Sophie finally spoke. Mom knows, she said quietly. My heart skipped a beat. Mom knows about? The stuff in the box, Sophie clarified. I told her a while ago. She wasn't thrilled, but she said it's normal for people my age to explore. She just made me promise to keep it private and not tell you. I blinked, trying to process this new information. She told you not to tell me? Sophie nodded. She said you'd be uncomfortable talking about it, that it would make things awkward between us. That stung more than I cared to admit. Sarah and I had always made a point of being open with each other, or so I thought. But now I was learning that there were things she kept from me. I don't understand, I muttered. Why would she hide that from me? Sophie shrugged. Maybe she just wanted to avoid a big family drama. Family drama. That phrase echoed in my mind as I left Sophie's room and returned to the living room, where Sarah was curled up on the couch with a glass of wine. Family drama. Was that why she'd kept quiet about Sophie? Or was it about something more? As I sat down beside her, Sarah gave me a warm smile. Everything okay? I nodded absently, but inside, I felt a growing unease. Because while the mystery of the black box was solved, the mystery of my wife was only getting deeper. That night, sleep didn't come easily. I lay in bed beside Sarah, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through everything I'd discovered. The mystery of the black box was resolved, but the phone charger and the missing wedding ring still gnawed at me. I'd brushed it off before, but now it felt like a glaring inconsistency I couldn't ignore. Sarah had always been sentimental about her wedding ring. She never took it off, not even when we went swimming or when she did housework. So why hadn't I seen it on her finger lately? The next morning, I decided to ask about it casually. Over breakfast, I glanced at her hand and noticed the empty space where her ring should be. My heart thumped. Hey, I said, keeping my tone light. I noticed you haven't been wearing your ring lately. Everything okay? Sarah froze for just a second, a subtle pause, but I caught it. Then she smiled. Oh, that. I've been meaning to tell you. The stone came loose a few weeks ago. I took it to the jeweler to get it fixed. It sounded reasonable, but something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. Which jeweler did you take it to? I asked. She blinked, caught off guard by the follow-up question. The usual one downtown. Why? Just curious, I said, forcing a smile. You never mentioned it. She shrugged. It must have slipped my mind. I'll pick it up this week. The conversation ended, but the nagging feeling in my gut didn't. Later that afternoon, while Sarah was out, I made a decision. I grabbed my car keys and drove to the jewelry store downtown. If she'd taken her ring there, they'd have a record of it. When I walked in, the woman behind the counter greeted me with a friendly smile. Good afternoon. How can I help you today? I'm here about a ring, I said, trying to sound casual. My wife, Sarah, mentioned she brought her wedding ring in for repairs. The woman's smile faltered. I'm sorry, sir. I don't recall any recent repairs under that name. Let me check our system. She typed something into the computer, then shook her head. No, I'm afraid there's no record of that. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Thanks anyway. As I walked back to my car, my thoughts swirled. She'd lied. There was no ring at the jeweler's. But why? Back home, I sat in the garage for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. My hands were trembling. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed to know more. That evening, Sarah was in a good mood. She sat next to me on the couch, flipping through her phone while the kids watched TV. I tried to act normal, but I was preoccupied with what I'd learned. At one point, Sophie came into the living room and sat on the armrest of the couch. Dad? Yeah, I asked, glancing up. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Mom's been weird lately. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? Sophie glanced toward Sarah, who was engrossed in her phone, then leaned closer. She's been getting a lot of texts. She always puts her phone face down when we're around. I heard her talking to someone late at night a couple of times. Did you hear what she said? Sophie shook her head. Just bits and pieces. She sounded nervous. I thought it was work, but I don't know. My chest tightened. I gave Sophie a reassuring nod. Thanks for telling me. As she left the room, I glanced at Sarah again, my wife of 18 years, the mother of my children, and suddenly, I realized something chilling. I didn't know her as well as I thought. The call came just as I was finishing up the dinner dishes. Sarah was upstairs putting Emily to bed, and Sophie was in her room. When I saw the caller ID, I hesitated for a second before answering. It was Daniel, my best friend since college. We hadn't spoken in a couple of weeks. Life always seemed to get in the way. Hey man, I greeted, trying to keep my voice light. What's up? Mike, Daniel said, and just from his tone, I could tell he wasn't buying my casual act. You sound off. Everything okay? I forced a laugh. Yeah, just busy with work. Kids, you know how it is. There was a pause on the other end. You've never been a good liar, you know that? What's really going on? I sighed. The truth was, I didn't feel like talking. Not to Daniel, not to anyone. But the weight of everything I'd been carrying started to feel unbearable. Maybe getting out of the house would help clear my head. Want to grab a drink? I asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. Meet me at O'Malley's in 30. The bar was loud and bustling with life, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I spotted Daniel at a corner table, already nursing a beer. His familiar grin faded the moment he saw me. Geez, you look terrible, he said as I sat down. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. He chuckled, but his eyes stayed serious. All right, spill it. What's going on? For a moment, I debated how much to tell him. But as the words tumbled out, the missing wedding ring, the lies, the mysterious phone charger, the tension with Sarah, I realized I couldn't stop. I told him everything, right down to the black box I'd found in Sophie's drawer and how I was spiraling with doubt. When I finally finished, Daniel leaned back, his expression unreadable. Wow, he muttered. That's a lot. Tell me about it. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of my confession hanging in the air. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel grinned. What? I asked, narrowing my eyes. I wasn't going to bring this up, but, he leaned forward, lowering his voice. I've been doing some side work lately. Side work? Daniel nodded, his grin widening. I've been working as a penetration tester. I blinked. A pen tester? You mean like hacking? Legally, he clarified. Companies hire me to find vulnerabilities in their systems. Weak passwords, unsecured networks, that kind of thing. I get in, tell them how I did it, and they pay me to fix it. I stared at him, trying to reconcile this new version of my best friend with the guy I'd known for years. Since when? A few months. It's kind of a rush, honestly. But the point is, he leaned in even closer. If you think Sarah has another phone or something she's hiding, I could help you find out. I stared at him, unsure how to respond. You're serious? Dead serious. I can't promise I'll find anything, but I can check her phone records, her emails, even her social media accounts. And if there is another phone, I could hack it. The idea sent a shiver down my spine. I wasn't sure if I was ready to take that step. Look, man, Daniel said softly, his tone turning serious. I know you're hurting, and I know you want answers. You don't have to decide now, but if you want my help, you've got it. I took a long sip of my beer, letting his words sink in. I didn't know what scared me more, the possibility that Daniel might find something, or the possibility that he wouldn't. Either way, I was about to cross a line I could never come back from. Daniel's offer hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. Hack Sarah's phone. Even thinking about it made me uneasy. It wasn't the kind of person I thought I was. We'd been married for nearly 2 decades, built a life together, raised kids. Trust was supposed to be the foundation of everything. But that foundation had cracks now. Would it be legal? I asked, not even sure why I cared about legality when my whole world was unraveling. Daniel smirked. Not exactly. But we're not talking about draining her bank account or selling secrets. This is about protecting yourself, man. You need to know what's going on. If she's hiding something, you deserve to find out. I swirled my beer, watching the foam dissolve. The idea of spying on my wife made me sick. But what was the alternative? Keep pretending everything was fine while doubts gnawed at me? Wait for her to come clean, knowing she might never do it? No, I couldn't do that. What would you need? I finally asked. Daniel leaned back in his chair, looking relieved that I hadn't shut him down. If there's a second phone, I'd need access to it, just for a few minutes. Or if you think she's using her regular phone to communicate, I could clone it remotely. I frowned. Clone it? How does that work? I set up a virtual copy of her phone. Any texts, calls, or social media messages she sends or receives, I see them in real time. Real time. The thought made my chest tighten. It felt invasive, wrong. But then I remembered the way Sarah had been acting lately. The lies about the wedding ring, the secretive phone habits, the late-night calls. She wasn't being honest with me. Maybe she deserved this. I don't know if she has a second phone, I admitted, but I did find an old charger in her drawer. Daniel raised an eyebrow. An old charger? For what kind of phone? I think it's for one of those older iPhones. The wide connector. Daniel nodded slowly, considering this. Okay, here's what we'll do. Next time she leaves her phone unattended, give me a call. I'll walk you through how to set up the clone. I nodded, still unsure if I could go through with it. We left the bar an hour later. As we stood outside in the chilly evening air, Daniel clapped me on the shoulder. You're doing the right thing, he said. I wasn't so sure. When I got home, the house was quiet. Sarah was already asleep, and the kids' doors were closed. I slipped into our bedroom, careful not to wake her, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her peaceful face. Was I overthinking things? Had I let my imagination run wild? Maybe the missing ring and the phone charger had innocent explanations. Maybe Sophie's comments about Sarah's secretive behavior were just misunderstandings. But even as I told myself that, the doubts wouldn't go away. I climbed into bed, careful not to disturb her. As I lay there in the dark, I remembered Daniel's words. You deserve to know. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Sarah in the shower. Her phone sat on the nightstand, its screen dark. I stared at it, my heart pounding in my chest. Was this my chance? I reached out, my fingers hovering over the phone for a moment before I grabbed it. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up. No passcode. The phone was unlocked. Without giving myself time to second-guess, I grabbed my own phone and dialed Daniel. He picked up after one ring. Mike. I've got it, I whispered. Her phone. It's unlocked. Good, Daniel said, his voice calm and steady. Let's do this. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at Sarah's phone on the nightstand. It was unlocked, right there for the taking, but time was running out. The water had just shut off in the bathroom. She'd be out in minutes. My heart hammered as I grabbed my phone and dialed Daniel. He picked up after one ring. You've got the phone? He asked. Yeah, but I don't have long. She's in the shower. Daniel let out a low whistle. Okay, listen carefully. I'm sending you a link to install the cloning app. Once it's installed, it'll copy her texts, calls, and social media to my server. But you'll need to buy me some time to finish setting it up remotely. Can you distract her? Distract her? My mind scrambled for an idea. Hold on, I whispered, my pulse racing as I tiptoed out of the bedroom and knocked on the bathroom door. Yeah, Sarah called from inside. Hey, you've got a minute? I wanted to ask you something. There was a pause before she answered. Can it wait? I'm almost done. I grimaced. Come on, think. Actually, it's about Sophie, I said, throwing out the first thing that came to mind. I think she's going through something, and I wanted to talk to you before she leaves for school. That did it. Sarah cracked the door open, her face concerned. Sophie? Is she okay? I nodded. I think so. I just feel like we should have a chat with her together. Sarah opened the door wider, wrapping her towel around herself. Let me get dressed and we'll talk. No rush, I said quickly, trying to hide my nerves. Take your time. I'll go check on her. As Sarah disappeared into the bedroom, I grabbed my phone and shot a text to Daniel, distracting her now. How long? The reply came almost instantly. 2 minutes. Keep her busy. I knocked on Sophie's door, mostly for show. She was on her phone, earbuds in, completely oblivious to the unfolding drama. "Everything good, sweetie?" I asked. She gave me a confused look. Yeah. Okay. Just checking." I wandered back toward the bedroom, peeking in to see Sarah sitting at the vanity, brushing her hair. I forced a smile. "Want me to make coffee?" She smiled back, warm and genuine. "Sure. Thanks, hon." I turned and hurried to the kitchen, pulling out the coffee maker with shaking hands. My phone buzzed with another message from Daniel. "Done. You're all set." Relief washed over me. The phone was cloned. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves, and returned to the bedroom with a fresh cup of coffee. Sarah accepted it with a grateful smile. "You're sweet," she said. I forced myself to smile back, but inside, I was already bracing for what I might find on that cloned phone. Because whatever secrets Sarah was hiding, I was about to uncover them. The rest of the morning was a blur. I went through the motions, dropping Emily off at school, grabbing groceries, fixing a leaky faucet, but my mind was glued to my phone. Every time a notification came through, I felt a surge of adrenaline. Daniel had set up the clone perfectly. I could see Sarah's texts, her calls, even the app she was using. For the first couple of hours, everything looked normal. Messages from her work group, a chat with Sophie about dinner plans, a few Pinterest notifications. Nothing suspicious. Maybe I had been overreacting. But then, just after noon, a text popped up that made my stomach drop. It was from a contact saved as LJ. "Sarah, can we meet later? Usual spot?" The reply came almost instantly. "LJ, can't wait. Missed you." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. The exchange was quick, casual, intimate. I immediately texted Daniel. "Me, got something." Daniel, "LJ?" Me, "Yeah, they're meeting later. Can you trace the number?" There was a pause before Daniel replied. "Daniel, I'll get on it. Could take a bit. Meanwhile, keep an eye on her phone. See if she sends anything else." I nodded to myself, even though he couldn't see me. LJ. Who the hell was LJ? Sarah got home around 5 o'clock, looking tired but cheerful. She gave me a kiss on the cheek and started talking about her day, but I barely heard a word. My mind was stuck on that message. At one point, I couldn't resist asking, "Did you have any meetings today?" Sarah glanced at me, her expression perfectly neutral. "Just the usual stuff." "Why?" I shrugged. "Just wondering." She smiled and went back to unpacking groceries. Effortless. Natural. If I hadn't seen the messages myself, I'd have never suspected a thing. Around 8 o'clock, after the kids were in bed, I got another notification. "Sarah, on my way. See you soon." LJ, can't wait, babe. I clenched my jaw. "Babe, going out for a bit," Sarah called from the living room. I promised Melissa I'd grab coffee with her. "Melissa?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah," she replied casually. "We've been meaning to catch up." I nodded slowly. "All right. Don't be too late." She gave me a quick smile and grabbed her purse. Moments later, the door closed behind her. The second she was gone, I called Daniel. "She's on her way to meet him," I said, pacing the living room. "I'm tracking her phone," Daniel replied. "Hang tight." I stood by the window, watching Sarah's car disappear down the street. My chest felt tight, my mind spinning. A minute later, Daniel's voice came through the line, grim and serious. "Mike, you're not going to like this." "What?" "I traced the number," Daniel said slowly. "It's registered to Luke Jameson." I froze. "Luke?" I whispered. Daniel didn't have to explain further. I knew exactly who Luke Jameson was. He was Sarah's ex-boyfriend, the one she dated before me, the one she once said she'd never really gotten over. And now, she was meeting him. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. "Mike." Daniel's voice was cautious. "I'm here," I muttered, my voice hollow. "You okay?" No, I wasn't okay. Not even close. When Daniel told me the number belonged to Luke Jameson, Sarah's ex-boyfriend, my heart sank. I hadn't thought about Luke in years, but now it made sense. The secret texts, the lies, the sneaking around. Daniel kept digging while I sat there, trying to keep my emotions in check. A few minutes later, he sent me a photo. Sarah and Luke. sitting at a restaurant booth. Her hand was on his, and they both looked at ease, like they belonged together. But it wasn't just an affair. Daniel uncovered more texts between Luke and someone else. The messages revealed Sarah had secretly bought a house with Luke, using money from her personal account. The plan was in motion. She was preparing to leave me, starting a new life with him. When Sarah came home that night, I couldn't bring myself to confront her. She kissed me on the cheek, completely unaware of what I now knew. "Everything okay?" she asked, her smile so practiced, so effortless. I nodded slowly, forcing the words out. "Yeah, everything's fine." But deep down, I knew everything was over. The next few days were a blur. I kept up appearances for the kids, but inside, I was unraveling. Every time Sarah smiled at me or talked about mundane things like dinner plans, I couldn't help but wonder how long she'd been pretending, how long she'd been living a double life. Daniel kept digging. He found more texts between Sarah and Luke, plans to sell the house, talk of vacations, even a message from Luke. "I can't wait to finally be with you. No more sneaking around." The worst part? There was no apology, no remorse in any of her messages. Just excitement about their future together. On Monday morning, I made my decision. I met with my lawyer and filed for divorce. No confrontation, no dramatic showdown. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing how deeply she'd hurt me. I arranged to serve her the papers at work, a public, undeniable end to what we had. That afternoon, Daniel called me. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel empty." "You'll get through it," he said. "Trust me. You deserve better." I wasn't sure if I believed him, but I knew one thing for certain. I was done living in the dark. The day Sarah was served, she called me in a panic. "Mike, what's going on? Divorce? Where is this coming from?" For a moment, I almost caved. Her voice, the woman I'd loved for nearly 2 decades, sounded desperate, confused. But then I remembered the texts, the lies, the plans she'd made with Luke. "You know exactly what this is about," I said quietly. "I know everything, Sarah. The messages, the house, him." There was silence on the other end. For once, she had nothing to say. "You made your choice," I continued. "Now I'm making mine." I hung up before she could respond. The months that followed were difficult. The kids struggled to understand why Mom wasn't living with us anymore. I kept my explanation simple. "Mom and I just need different things now." Sophie took it the hardest. One night, she asked me if it was her fault. "No, sweetheart," I said, hugging her tightly. "It's not your fault. None of this is your fault." But even as I comforted her, I couldn't help but wonder how much damage had already been done. One day, I got a message from Daniel. "Daniel, any plans this weekend?" Me, "Nope." "Why?" "Daniel, time to start living again. Let's grab a drink." At the bar that evening, Daniel raised his glass to me. "To moving forward," he said. I clinked my glass against his, feeling the faintest glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start.